Everybody, please welcome Dr. Jen Kulik, founder and CEO of SilverKite Community Arts, LLC, Dr. Elizabeth Lika Lokon, founder and director of Opening Minds Through Art, and Alex Santiago-Jirau, director of education and community engagement at the New York Theater Workshop. Welcome, welcome, all three of you. So when we were designing today's program, we decided that it would make good sense to start with short videos about each of your programs, and that would give everyone a chance to just see your work in action just right off the bat. So audience members, I want you to know each of these three videos is about 5 minutes in length, and we're going to share them round robin style, one after the other, starting with Alex, going to Jen, and then finally to Lika. So is everybody ready to go here? Tiffany, are you all set with the video? Okay, great. Alex, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Alex Santiago-Jirau. In December of 2019, the Today Show came to us because they were interested in doing a feature around the term "okay boomer" and trying to respond to the negative connotations that the term implies. And they came interested in taking a look at a program that was approaching intergenerational conversations. This feature on the Today Show came out in January 2020 as we were preparing to talk more about our program at a national level. And then, of course, you all know what happened in March of 2020. So not a lot of people saw this feature, and so we're happy to share it with you so you can see our program in action. Thank you.
How do you get a room full of teenagers and 65-plus-year-olds to laugh like this? Simple. You ask them to make up some dance moves or create a handshake. It is all part of Mind the Gap, a New York City workshop with one goal: helping two generations from two very different times use the art of theater to learn from and teach each other about their lives. It is a conversation that is particularly relevant right now. Okay. You may have seen "Okay Boomer" trending all over the internet. Okay, Boomer. Or if you're a baby boomer like me, on your television.
What the young people are saying to the old people now.
That's it.
Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer. It's an age-old story, updated with music and memes. One generation blaming its elders for the world's problems, and the other accusing its younger half of being too lazy to fix them. Here, though,
find a partner of the opposite generation.
That narrative is turned on its head.
You've made me just so much more confident about myself.
For the last 8 weeks, this group has challenged themselves to see past their differences and create meaningful connections.
I was blown away.
You're like one of the kindest people I've ever met.
My friend and NBC News colleague Savannah Sellers, nearly 40 years my junior, joined in on the fun with me. We wanted to understand this generational divide and whether it is truly possible to bridge it.
Who was surprised? Someone had to be surprised in this process.
I was just surprised, how relatable they are. When you see an older person, like yourself, you think, wow, they haven't been in high school for a long, long time.
This "okay boomer" meme online began out of this place that was young people feeling like older people think everything with us is a kid problem, but really young people are like, but there's no Social Security, boomers aren't moving, they're staying alive longer.
It's just difficult to care about politics when the older generation is inadvertently causing problems that are affecting our future.
There were so many things that were going on that the boomers were able to actually lighten for your arrival. But I'm not taking any credit for it, and I'm not pulling any punches. I'm just saying that if you're alive and well, no matter what age you are, you need to stand up for the rights of everyone, and then we can move forward.
Before there was "Okay Boomer," there was "Don't trust anyone over 30. So
that is so from our era, right?
I was coming of age. I thought there was a progress, and it was just going to get better and better and better and better. And somewhere along the way, that became untrue. And I think this generation is coming into kind of the backwash of the same problems being as urgent as they were when I was their age.
It's human nature to blame people for what we have to face, but I really don't think it's effective.
Do you feel like we're listening to each other in our world?
I think boomers tried their best to sympathize with us. They try to learn.
I think Gen Zers, because of technology, it's harder to interact with them. They're not as good with conversation. I think they're a little more self-righteous. They're not as humbled. They're so idealistic by the world, they haven't really gotten knocked down yet.
It feels like generational differences are one of the last frontiers where we seem to think it's okay to stereotype. It's supposed to be funny. Cynthia doesn't think it's funny.
I think we're just focusing on certain people, whereas I don't think the general population feels that way. I really don't find that the reality.
So I'm 68 years old. Everybody I work with is younger than I am. And I live in mortal fear. Like, am I the crazy old guy?
You're under-evaluating yourself because you have meaning too.
But we wonder, people of our age, if our meaning is meaning to others.
At my job, I really felt like they were actively saying, okay, these elder people cost more money, you know, they have their health care is more. I really did feel that I was just being edged out.
The people who have validated me the most or supported me the most were boomers. I've had a wonderful experience with my grandmother. She's always made me feel great about myself. And these people have done the same.
I think that there may be some gems here that the younger people can pick up on, as well as they have a lot of things that can enhance me and make me a better person. It makes us a universal existence.
It's a big world. If 7 elders can come into space and empathize with 7 teens purposely, then this world can be better.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jen Kulik, and I'm the founder and CEO of SilverKite Community Arts, and we are based in Seattle. Alex, thank you for sharing that wonderful, inspiring video to kick off this session this afternoon. So we will be sharing a video a little bit about SilverKite Community Arts, our sort of structure and programming, and how we develop our intergenerational programs. This video is hot off the presses, so we don't have captioning on it yet, and there's some sound glitches there, but I hope that you will watch the video and get a sense of the work that we do. Thanks.
Today, and this was so special. I'm gonna get teary. My grandchildren live in DC, so I don't see them too often. And my granddaughter's 15 and my grandson is 11. So this was a real treat, and happy to meet such great kids.
SilverKite Community Arts was founded by Dr. Jennifer Kulik. There are 4 tenets to SilverKite, including creative aging, intergenerational programming, resources, and professional development. Before we get into these 4 tenets, here are a few fast facts about SilverKite. We are arts engagement specialists. We employ 22 professional teaching artists to design and facilitate our programming, and over 250,000 people have engaged with our programs and services since our founding in 2013. We also received the Generations United Innovation Award in 2019 in recognition of our intergenerational programming. Our Spark Boxes have been used by over 400 different skilled nursing communities in several different states, and we've performed 11 of our touring intergenerational theater company productions. Our first tenet is creative aging, arts for older adults, and we have online workshops and in-person workshops. Both of these workshops happen in partnership with libraries and other organizations, including the Northwest Parkinson's Foundation and the North Bellevue Community Center, among others. We host our online workshops via Zoom and our in-person ones at the communities. And here is a testimonial from one of our class participants. Our next tenet is intergenerational programming. Here are a few examples of some of our intergenerational programs, and then we also have our intergenerational theater company. To give you some more insight, we specialize in designing and facilitating research-based, site-specific intergenerational arts programs. We have over 25 years of award-winning intergenerational program experience and research, so we know what works to help create meaningful, lasting, cross-generational experiences. Our intergenerational theater company is nationally award-winning, and they create and perform original life story-based theater productions, which tour to various communities in the Puget Sound area of Washington State. Here is a testimonial from Caroline, who was a 9th grade intergenerational program participant. The next tenet of SilverKite are resources. We have our Spark Boxes and then our Creative Community Kit, which is launching to the public in 2024. Our Spark Boxes are intergenerational arts toolkits that are specifically designed to help build intergenerational relationships by sparking conversation, connection, and fun. Our Creative Community Kits are designed for older adults in skilled nursing, memory care, or other assisted living facilities. We know that planning programming, gathering supplies, and then facilitating activity can be difficult when staff already have a busy schedule, so we aim to help save time and stress by prepping art engagement activities for them. Here are a couple testimonials about our Spark Boxes. Last but most definitely not least is our 4th tenet of professional development and consulting. You can pause here to see some of the examples of our programming in this arena. SilverKite Community Arts uses the arts as a tool to help bridge generations and eliminate the effects of loneliness. We offer consulting services and professional development workshops to help others develop the same skills that we use to connect communities through the arts. And these programs are offered both in person and online. Here are some ways that you can contact us, including our socials, website, and our address for our office, our phone number, and general email. Feel free to shoot us a message if you have any questions.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Elizabeth Lokon. I go by Lika. I work for Scripps Gerontology Center at Miami University in Ohio. The video you're about to see is about the program Opening Minds to Art, or OMA, with the mission of building bridges across age and cognitive barriers. But we also have a virtual version, which is called Scripps Avid, and we have a caregiver program called Creative Caregiving Guide. So we'll talk more about the other two later on, maybe in the breakout room, but the video is only about OMA, which is the foundation of all the other programs. And it started in 2007 and now in over 200 communities in US, Canada, and Indonesia. Thank you. People with intact cognitions oftentimes try to free ourselves from the limitation of having to draw this thing that looks like that, you know? And when you are free from that, you can then break into the abstract world more directly. So when the ability to express is impaired, they think the content is gone. And that's where the violation of human rights come in, because the human is still there. It's just that they are locked behind the disease. It doesn't mean that there isn't somebody in there that's trying to express. And so art is a sort of channel. When logical thinking and verbal expression is impaired, art is still there for them to express.
And when I see what I do, and I realize how it comes out, I'm beside myself. Give her a little something.
Working with people to mention, learning more about it, not just via textbook and what you see in movies, how it's portrayed, I guess. It's changed my experience at Miami because now it's everything that I do here. So I don't really know what I would have done without this program. I think that being involved with this has given me purpose on this campus. I work and I have friends and I feel like I'm doing stuff, but gerontology has made me feel like what I'm doing is really going to make a difference, especially at Miami, because I can be a part of the gerontology club that raises money and I can help the residents in the community, and it furthers my, like, I don't know, drive to do that throughout my entire life.
Put an ocean and a river between everything yourself and home. You must be somewhere in London. You must be loving your life and the rain. You must be somewhere.
Too often people with dementia in long-term care facilities, everything's decided for them and they don't make decisions, and it takes too long, it's too confusing, and this is the 1 hour where they get to decide everything on their own. So choices are built in, opportunities for autonomy is built into the process, and then success is almost guaranteed.
There's no other experience possible, I think, that brings together two very different generations where they both benefit from an interaction with each other. And it goes back to our core values of love and honor and how we interact with others.
You see the very authentic relationship that they have formed, and just how incredibly proud the artists are of the work that they have produced. You see them leave in a completely different mindset than they entered that room.
It's our obligation to provide as rich and a full experience for these individuals who are suffering with dementia as humanly possible.
The mission of the program is building bridges across age and cognitive barriers. So that bridge is actually a relationship, and within that relationship, at the foundation is love.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, all three of you. We're just going to bring on Alex now and Jen. Good to see everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Lika. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Jen. It's wonderful to see your programs in action. And remember that we're here in this conference space, but we're doing amazing work out in the actual world. So great to see it. Okay, so I am really excited about our conversation ahead, and I want to just remind our audience members that please use the chat to share your thoughts, to share above all your questions, so that when we get to our audience Q&A session towards the end of our panel, we can return to them and make sure that we hear what you're thinking and the panelists can respond. Let's dive right in. So our first question is about terminology. So just to set the table, the term intergenerational, or sometimes we have heard co-generational, it means different things for different people. And wondering if you could share in your work, what does intergenerational or co-generational mean in your program? So Lika, why don't we start with you?
Because I teach at a university and all my population is higher ed students, we started out with college students connecting with older adults living with dementia. But then, since then, this is now 16 years, 17 years later, we're connecting people with and without dementia with someone in a non-adjacent generation. So that's a broad definition for our program.
That's great. I have not heard it put that way, so thank you for that. Alex, Jen, who wants to chime in?
I'm happy to jump in. Our program in New York City, at the theater at New York Theater Workshop, started because we had an education program in New York City public schools that was serving obviously predominantly young people, though we were also serving teachers and administrators in terms of professional development. And our audiences off Broadway that tended to be older, and the two were not talking to each other. And one of our values at the workshop is collaboration and an understanding that you cannot make theater either professionally or in a community setting without some kind of intergenerational collaboration and dialogue. And a light bulb went off, and we realized we need to bring this together if we really want to build community for theater as an art form, and also for theater and community engagement and community development. And so that's where it came from. And now we think about our program not just as intergenerational in terms of bringing different generations together, but also in an exchange and dialogue, but also a co-generational approach, as we have moved not just from just telling stories and creating work around those stories and having deep, meaningful conversations to actually problem posing. You know, what are some of the issues that affect our society, and how can the art form that we all have in common, theater, can offer potential solutions or potential pathways and strategies for addressing the issues that affect young and old together and the society as a whole. So now the program comes at it from a co-generational approach where we're dialoguing about the world, the issues, the strategies, and creating work that responds to those areas as well.
It's so interesting. So it sounds like, just to tease that out a little bit, that intergenerational might in your work mean a little bit more of like just these generations in a space together, whereas co-generation really is like an active collaboration, problem posing, problem solving, working together. That's very interesting. Thank you for that. How about you, Jen?
I think about intergenerational as an intentional interaction and the fostering of relationships between a non-adjacent generational group. So for example, youth, and then we skip a generation or two, and then grandparent age. So, but I think the key is that intentional interaction. I look at the definition of multi-generational as where generations are mixing in a common space, and intergenerational is the intention of bringing these generations together to either collaborate on creating a piece of artwork, having discussions, and so on. But it's that interaction that I think is the important piece there.
Great. Well, that really helps to just give our audience a frame for different ways to think about how this work of arts learning or arts engagement across the lifespan can look. And with that in mind, Alex, why don't you start us off? My next question for you all to answer is about the origin story of your program. Why do you do this work? What are the unmet needs that you saw in your community that prompted you to begin or extend or expand on this intergenerational work?
Yeah, and I sort of began to give a little bit of that origin story. The program, A New York Theater Workshop, started in 2009. And it came out of a conversation that my predecessor in the education department at the time, and our artistic director at the time, Jim Nicola, were having about our education programs in general. The education department at the theater worked, as I was saying, in a high school context, and also working in audience engagement and audience development and community engagement. And there were programs specifically for young people and programs also for older adults that were ongoing, but we were not bringing them together. And, you know, our understanding of theater is that it is a space for community dialogue. It's where audiences and artists come together in dialogue. It's a space where we can see our humanity presented. We can present other stories that are not our own and find ways to connect and empathize with other realities. And we were having performances for young people, and we were having performances for general audiences, as I said, that included a range of ages certainly multi-generational, but on the older side, as it has become traditionally in the theater, a pattern that we're trying to disrupt. And we were hearing responses for young people to our work, and we were hearing older audiences respond to our work. And it was so interesting that we were noticing that there were similarities in those responses, but yet the audiences were not talking to each other. And so we had a roster of teaching artists and playwrights and a community of artists that worked across different generations, and it became sort of a natural thing for us to, and a value of ours to bring them together. But the thing that I'll talk more about our program and our structure and our breakouts as well, and sort of guide folks through our approach. But the thing that we decided to do at the outset was to create a process and a methodology where listening to each other, posing questions, posing dilemmas, just like the theater does for audiences, just like good playwrights do for audiences. Posing questions rather than providing answers was the pathway for us to take. And so rather than just doing the art, having the dialogue, and then allowing the art to come out of that dialogue, and then that art hopefully be transformational for folks.
Thank you so much. Lika or Jen, thoughts about the needs in your community, why you came to be?
Well, I'll just jump in here. So my sort of origin story with this work goes back to my own childhood. And I grew up in the theater at the community playhouse in Des Moines, Iowa. Shout out to them. And I had a lot of health problems in my middle school and high school years, and was, bullied, and had a lot of issues to deal with during that time period. So when I went away to college, I looked back at my experiences and was thinking about what were the things that helped me through this difficult period, and thus began a lifelong journey of trying to figure out, what is this beautiful thing that happens when people engage in the arts, and how can it help folks, and how can it help connect our community together? So I began working with young people, during the ages of which I had challenges myself, and then kind of fell into an intergenerational program. When I was working on my master's degree, a colleague said, hey, we should bring in some older adults from the community to talk with the students about their immigration stories. We were doing a collaborative theater and social studies curriculum about immigration in 1999. So we brought in some folks who were telling their stories, and I was weeping in the corner, and I still weep in the corner every time I see intergenerational connections happening, because it was so powerful to see these folks who may never have had an opportunity to interact with each other be invited into a space and intentionally connect with each other through different activities and conversations that we had designed and provided for them. So as an assessment of this curriculum that we had designed, the students were assigned to create a theater production about their learnings about immigration, and they wanted to perform the stories of the older folks and the folks from the community who had come in to share their stories. And so we did this incredible production, and we invited the folks who had shared their stories in with us. And one of the most powerful experiences that I can remember was this older gentleman that I had known for several years, who always wore a white suit, was very stoic. He had emigrated to the United States from Hungary, but always had a little twinkle in his eye, but was just kind of very stern. And he came up to me afterwards and was weeping and said that this production had given his life new meaning. So I realized in that moment that I was onto something. And so I wanted to do something in this arena of intergenerational relationships and the arts. And so, sort of started various research studies and projects and things like that to kind of answer this ongoing question that I have, is how can the arts help develop and strengthen our communities? And I do believe that intergenerational programs is the key to all things, in my personal opinion. When we were starting SilverKite, I knew that we wanted to do some kind of intergenerational program, and I had come from the education world and had been teaching at a school prior to starting SilverKite, and so I sort of understood the school language quite well, but didn't understand the senior living communities as well. So we focused our attention on providing creative aging programs first for the older adult folks in the Seattle area, and there were so many calls from them and also from schools to get our intergenerational programs started. So we began them in earnest out of a need in the community and out of an understanding of the populations that we were working with. We really do believe that in developing our intergenerational programs, the voices of the folks that are participating need to be at the forefront in the structures that we create. We design a bunch of different kinds of programs, so we really do listen to our community partners and try to fill their needs and their goals in the design and the facilitation of our work.
So it's interesting. We all have personal journeys that are different. And mine also started out, I studied art as an undergraduate, and then my PhD was in education. And then I taught for 15 years. And as time passes, everybody in my family get older. So I wanted to know what that's about, you know. So I went back to school and studied gerontology, but I had no background in aging whatsoever. So I started visiting nursing homes in the area, and I saw a lot of people that are comfortable and clean and safe, but sort of out of it. They're just nodding in front of the TV and not engaged at all. And I learned that they have dementia. But I didn't know anything about dementia. And I thought there must be a way, because I came from education background, there must be a way to engage them, no matter what they have. There must be. So I try to learn different ways, and art just come by accident because of my undergrad background. And art penetrates the fog of dementia. But it's not easy to work with people living with dementia. So I recruited my husband and a friend who's a retired art teacher to help me. And then I asked them afterwards, we debriefed and everything, and they seemed to learn so much from this experience that I thought, well, if they learn so much, why don't we make this formal to become an intergenerational program and let Miami students, that's where I was doing my grad work at the time, and that's where I am based right now, let them benefit also. So everything's sort of accidental in my case. And then eventually it became what OMA is, combining the two generations, doing art with people living with dementia.
It's amazing how origin stories, looking back on them, like seem to be sort of one foot in front of the next. You know, you don't even know what you're building and creating until you turn around and look, and then it all has fallen into place. Thank you all so much. Just to sort of, this is a question we hadn't prepared, but I think it will be an easy one to answer. I'm curious, Lika, hearing you say about what your perceptions were for the benefits also for the students who work in OMA. You know, that the question I posed earlier about attending to the unique needs of each generation or whichever generations are participating, how would you each describe that? Like, what are the generations receiving from each other? What are they giving to each other?
I can start with this because we have a bunch of research, published research that actually address that question. So basically, in one sentence, what the older adults get is opportunity for social engagement and creative expression, which translates to improved well-being. And we've done this study comparing the same older adults in different settings, the creative one, the non-creative one, and no activity at all. So we compared the same individuals across different settings over and over again. The arts compared to other activities promotes well-being. So that's the older adults. And for the what well-being means is more engagement, more social interest, more pleasure, more joy, basically. And then for the students, there are a couple of benefits. Like one is they become more positive in their attitudes towards older adults, especially those living with dementia. They become less scared. They're more interested in working with or serving older adults living with dementia. And the second, more qualitative data shows that they become more interested in choosing a profession working with older adults. And that's important because we have shortage of people working in the aging world in all capacities. So basically the students, the other elements besides becoming more positive is they become more able to see what they are capable of. They didn't realize that it's in them to be patient, to be kind, to be listening. They saw all this because of the opportunity given to them, and they like that self-perception. So they come back again and again, and then as a result, they become better human beings.
Beautiful. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I was going to say that I 100% agree. We don't have the research, but it's so glad to know that somebody has done some research about it and we have some points of connection. Absolutely. I would add that in our case, because it's highly co-generational and both elders and teens are going through the same process together, that certainly there is a sense of accomplishment at the end, right? That they have actually been able to write a short play, and that in fact, this short play is being read by professional actors and being brought to life in a limited fashion, but they're always marveled at their capacity to do that. And so for the older adults, there's a sense of continuing learning, continual possibility, and continual growth. On top of, you know, all of the things that have been mentioned already in terms of isolation, etc. So there's and a lot of our elders have gone on to submit their plays to festivals and competitions, and some even have been produced in festivals, and we constantly hear from them, I wrote another play, I took another class. And to add on the youth side, it's an incredible amount of self-esteem that comes out of it, both from the engagement with the older adults and sort of seeing the possibility of a life, of an adult life, because our elders share a lot about their struggles along with their successes, and how they were able to overcome those challenges. And it is not a mentoring program. It's not meant to be about elders giving advice, but undoubtedly the sharing of those stories of how you overcome, how do you persevere, has an impact on the young people around self-esteem. And in our case, a lot of the young people come to us with an interest in the arts, but they don't necessarily think that they're going to be professionals in theater. And having an older adult that it's not a parental figure telling them there is potential, you can pursue a career in the arts, you can have a fulfilling life in the arts as well, is highly empowering as well. So on top of everything that has been said, that I agree as well, I think that there's mutual benefit for ongoing learning and growth, and also empathy building across generations, and finding similarities. One of the things that we encounter with the elders and the teens that we work with is that they agree more than they disagree on their views of the world, and the challenges that we face. And that is hopeful for both young and older adults. And then, as I was saying before, just busting those stereotypes. We have two versions of our program, and I'll talk more about those later in our breakout session. We have a playwriting workshop and a performance workshop. And in our performance workshops, the elders are the first ones that are saying, no, I can throw myself on the floor, I can roll around. And sometimes the teens are the ones that are a little bit more cautious. This idea that you cannot do, that you cannot grow, that you cannot expand, it's busted from the get-go.
Awesome.
I would agree with both Lika and Alex about their assessments of the benefits of these programs. I would also say in our case, because we do so many different kinds of intergenerational programs, and we work with, youth from 4 to 40 and older folks from, 60 to 107. So our participants are in different developmental stages of their lives. We also, with the older adults, work with folks that are aging in place at home or in assisted living communities, or are in skilled nursing or in memory care. So it sort of depends on the configuration of the program and what exactly we are doing about what the specific benefits are. But I will say generally, and we do evaluate our programs and have done some research studies that have not yet been published, but hope to get to those at some point soon. We found that in general, youth are feeling more positive about themselves, and they have, in some cases, in some of the programs that we've done, have sort of seen the older adult participants as kind of I wouldn't say guardians, but as a liaison to help them develop relationships with their peers as well as with other people in the community. We've also found that it provides new perspectives for both older and younger participants. For older adults in particular, having a new sense of purpose and sort of being needed for this particular kind of program. And also for the younger folks, we've also heard from folks that they have learned and developed skills that they're taking back into their families, that they didn't know how to connect with their grandparent or the older folks in their family. And so by developing those skills as part of an intergenerational program, they're now taking it home and back to their home community and their local community.
So glad that we
add one more thing.
Of course, please.
What Jen was saying about being needed, having meaning for the older adults. I like to extend that to people living with dementia, even advanced dementia, who are not verbal, who cannot remember their partner's names and so on. But what we're doing in the OMA program is that we give them new identities. So because of the art show, like the art behind me is by people living with dementia, by a person living with dementia. So we have art shows, we have invitation, we have receptions. So they have developed a new identity as an artist. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that they also got as a new identity is a co-educator. Because if we don't take the students and engage them, have them engage with the older adults directly, they will not have the transformational learning experience by staying on campus, and so we achieve that transformational learning only thanks to the older adults that are teaching them without knowing that they're explicitly teaching them, but they are teaching them. And the students know this, so they appreciate the opportunity and see the older adults as someone they learn from. And this is people who are very advanced in dementia and moderate to late stages, still can have that contributing to society role.
Mm-hmm. Lika, your background as an educator is shining through with that transformational experiential learning. It's something to easily overlook, but it is so important, you know, what we learn just by doing. I'm glad that that this part of the conversation just organically came about, because my next question brings us a little bit more into contact with some of the challenges and the barriers. Like, now that we know what are the benefits across the age spectrum, let's weigh that aside, some of the barriers that you face in this work, and what are the strategies that you are finding are successful in navigating those barriers. Maybe also you can speak a little bit about what sustainability for your programs look like in light of what the barriers are and how you're addressing them. And Jen, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I just want to kind of add on to what Lika was just saying, because I really think that is profound, and I think is really an important element of impactful intergenerational programs, and that is the intention of, you know, bringing these folks together to do something, but also to provide opportunities for folks to be teachers and also learners, and doing vulnerable things together. We all have something to teach, we all have something to learn, and then when we are in a space where we have learned from each other and we have taught each other, then I think it feels more comfortable for folks to move into that next piece of trying something new together. So I just wanted to add on to what Lika was saying, because I really like that point that she was making. So I wanted to, so your question is about barriers and challenges. Oh, there are so many. But what we have found is that we work a lot with schools, and school schedules are challenging, budgets are challenging. We have found that connecting with older adults, senior living communities, or senior centers or community centers, those spaces are ready to go and want to do something and are very passionate about connecting older adults with youth in their communities. However, funding is a challenge, and finding funding, particularly for intergenerational programs, is challenging. A lot of times funding is available for this population or this population, and more, as you were saying earlier, Susan, most of the funding, you know, in the arts learning space is targeted towards the K-12 space. So, you know, we are always trying to be creative about funding and who's going to pay for something and how are we going to get the money and all of these kinds of things. And so that's a dance that we have to play. We've also found that there's a lot of interest in intergenerational program development and sustainability, but a lot of times the folks that are the program managers in these spaces or educators don't know how to go about developing these kinds of programs. And so, you know, if you knock on their door, they're ready to go, but they don't know who to contact in order to get them going or get them started. So that's what we're finding. We've found that space and time is always a challenge, but I would say that funding and a ongoing sustainable sort of training or opportunity for folks in the community to provide intergenerational programs that serve their community in the way that they feel best and meets the needs of their community are some things that are currently missing and will hopefully be available sometime shortly. We're working on some of those, but just to share, those are some of the barriers we're finding.
If I may just ask a follow-up question, if I understood you right, I think I heard you say that while on the one hand, sometimes it's difficult to work with schools, scheduling and the stresses of school and the school system, maybe on the other hand, it's a little bit easier to work with assisted living facilities or senior centers. I'm very curious about that, because in my work supporting the state arts councils in the last couple of years as they've been building programming and creative aging. We've been really trying hard to make those partnerships happen sort of at different levels of the ecosystem, and find it challenging. So maybe can you say a little bit more about how you found success in opening those doors?
Sure, and it is challenging because, as Lika was saying earlier, this industry is so understaffed, and there are so many folks that are struggling to do their job with very few other staff members, et cetera. And in any given period of time, our contact at a particular community can leave, and so then that leaves you sort of in a where who am I supposed to contact now? And right now we've got several different large scale programs happening, and we're constantly on the phone calling. We also have found, so we have an intergenerational theater company, which serves as a model for intergenerational relationships, which we tour to different spaces. And those are primarily senior living communities. And so we found that kind of entrance into a community so that they get to know us has kept a relationship going. But really it is sort of, walking in the door, making the phone calls. I mean, it does take quite a lot of work to do so. But we've been around for about 10 years. And so, we do have and have fostered and continue the relationships with those communities. So maybe that's part of the reason why that's easier for us.
Yeah, the startup is extra hard, and it does take work.
Yeah. Yes.
Sustaining and keeping relationships really vital, for sure. Who would like to answer next about some barriers and what you think of when you think about sustainability for your work?
In our case, we have very strong relationships with our public schools and working with teachers, and particularly with drama teachers, and in New York City public schools that are generally underfunded, under-resourced, and where a partnership with the theater program can enhance and expand a theater program. With a theater company can enhance and expand a theater program at the school. So we have had a lot of success with those partnerships. The thing that I would say about our program and how it differs from some other intergenerational programs is that predominantly we work with older adults that still live at home, are very mobile. We have worked obviously with some folks at the beginning stages of dementia, or with other disabilities, particularly limited eyesight. And so, but predominantly some of them live at home or live alone. And a part of the attractive nature of our program for both youth and older adults is getting out of their homes and coming to a community space, getting out of the school and coming to a more neutral community space, a theater space, where they are also accessing the art and engaging with the artists that are in the space. And so I also want to say co-teaching and co-learning is at the center of what we do as a popular education technique, because the work that we do is popular education. And so that's really meaningful to us. In terms of the challenges, of course, funding, and there's a limitation in terms of foundations and agencies that intentionally support intergenerational programming or have it as an area of evaluation or community engagement, which would be a start as well. And our programs are intentionally free for participants. We haven't promoted our program nationally or internationally, but folks have such a hunger for arts intergenerational programs that folks from all over the world are knocking on our door, asking, can you come to our space? And there's limitations both locally in terms of funding and internationally, nationally, to bring trained educators and facilitators into the work. The other challenge that I would add, and it's reflective more and more of the times, is trained facilitators that are also capable of facilitating, in our case, really difficult conversations around race, around equity, around diversity, around inclusion, around conflict and conflict resolution, because our work is not neutral in the sense that we're not creating art that is not interested in exploring the difficult questions that the world is undergoing. I mean, that is the purpose of theater, right? The purpose of theater is not just to entertain, but to educate, to provoke questions, to wrestle with the institutions that shape our society. And by extension, our program also wrestles with those questions and build already into the program and into the reality are the power dynamics between young and old, right? And so really doing this work, and I would argue doing this work across any intergenerational program, also requires a sophistication around these conversations. And so part of the training that folks need to have is not just in the discipline and in the art form, but it's also on this host of other facilitation skills that are integral to subverting power dynamics, to exploring power dynamics, and to bringing people together across difference, whatever the difference is. And so that has meant as a challenge that not only do we have to create our own curriculum and seek our own professional development and expertise outside of the institution and outside of the art form, but also create training for our facilitators that intentionally includes that into the process and the curriculum.
So it's all similar challenges of time, space, money, and turnover. Mm-hmm. So facilitators that are trained in OMA, because we are working with specific population, the training is 20 hours. And then when you finish training, they can work a year, 2 years, and then move on. And then we get the same problem that Jen was explaining earlier. So there's a lot of interest in this kind of programming from assisted living, memory care, long-term care communities, but there's no money. So we never charge the actual older adults, but we would like to be able to charge the community where they live, but there's no funding there either. So everybody wants it if it's free. Mm-hmm. So that's one challenge. And then for this, I don't know how to address that challenge. It requires policy changes at a level that we are not influencing. So, but in terms of strategies to address some of these challenges, I find that publishing research papers is important to give legitimacy to these kind of programming, and who benefits, how they benefit, measure it, and all of that. So that's one. And the other strategy is to incorporate it into the curriculum. So for us, participating in OMA can meet certain requirements like experiential learning requirement, service learning requirements, whatever the requirements are. If you can integrate into the school system, like in Indonesia, for example, OMA is part of the medical school requirement. When they learn about dementia, they have to do OMA. And then it also is part of the psychology department. When they want to become a community psychologist as opposed to a work or school psychologist, they have to learn how to work with older adults in the community, including those living with dementia, and then they have to do OMA. So if you can integrate it into the curriculum, and then you have champions in those schools who believe in your program, who see the benefit, especially because they've seen your research, then they start becoming champions for your program within their organization. So that's how we address our problems. I don't know how to address the money situation.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. These were all really clear and just different vantage points, sharing some of common barriers, but also ones that you each have sort of a different angle on. And Lika, to your point about, at the program level, it's hard to solve the policy level problems. One of the next question that I'd like you all to address is to share maybe just one thing that is, in your opinion, characteristic of a high quality intergenerational arts learning program. Because we do have, in our audience, many folks who work at state arts councils who themselves are not necessarily the ones with their, the influence and the power to change the policy, but who are certainly your colleagues in that conversation. And what is valuable information for your colleagues at the state arts councils is often, what are the best practices? What do we need to look out for as really the high quality, well-grounded, meeting a community need clearly kind of programs so that they know, they're educated, they're informed about what to look for in this specific area of creative aging, which absolutely, Alex, to your point, I think it was you who made it. It's a specific lens, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the thing, I'm jumping at the bits to answer the question because it's something that we struggle with on a regular basis. There's a misconception that intergenerational, multi-generational, or co-generational programmings in the arts lack rigor. And so that is a misconception. A tenet of an good arts intergenerational program is intentionality, as Jen was saying, and rigor about the art discipline as well, because there is an incredible amount of benefit in providing participants, young and old, with a rigorous experience in the art form. It is a benefit, it's incredibly more fulfilling, and it's art making. It's not arts and crafts, right? It is art making, rigorous arts making, and artists are facilitating the development of other artists in the space. And so that's one thing that I think arts agencies can sort of look at and have experience in assessing and evaluating organizations that are doing rigorous artistic work. And often those of us in these programs are also producing the work with professionals as part of the community. So that's one misconception that we should, and that we should just sort of say it doesn't happen. And I think it's easy to look at programs that are doing it with intentionality and rigor versus those that are not, and honestly fund those that are doing it, along with all the other work that it's happening, or requiring that there is a program that could also come out, or an element of a program that could have an intergenerational component.
Thank you. Lika or Jen?
I'd like to second Alex's point about rigor. Especially in the world of long-term care communities, everybody's understaffed, undereducated, overworked, underpaid. Nobody has time to produce activities or programming that has that kind of rigor. So you end up with stuff that is even if you have dementia, you can feel embarrassed to put your name on that, So I think it's really important that you maintain this rigor throughout the whole lifespan, throughout the whole range of cognitive abilities. So that's important. And I think the other thing that's important is power. When Alex was talking about co-learning, co-teaching, implied is there's equal power between the two sides. It's not like young people helping older people do stuff. That doesn't work. That's a power imbalance. Power has to be at the same level. And that has to be intentional in the design of the program. And I think that could be part of the question that the grant funder can say, show us that this is a power shared situation. And the other thing is, I think it's important to have roughly equal numbers. For some reason, if your one group is much larger than the other group, it doesn't work so well. And it's my experience anyway. I don't know if you all see the same thing. And then it has to be celebratory. There should be fun and not just a one-time drop in, do this for an hour and done. It needs to be repeat and long and big, and then eventually you have a big party, and then everybody can have fun and be proud of what they created together.
Agreed on all of those.
I agree. Also, however, I do see some value in a one-time and done experience sometimes. And in thinking about trying to provide intergenerational programs to as many people as possible, going out into the community and providing opportunities on a drop-in basis in a public space, which is what I'm going to be talking about in the breakout session, really can introduce people to an art form that they may have never tried before and want to try it, and then they can commit to a longer program, or they see the value of connecting intergenerationally and want to do more. So I do see that there's a role for those kinds of programs, but I agree with you that rigor and those connections they can't be developed in 5 seconds. It has to be a long-term, sustainable, ongoing kind of relationship. I want to echo the idea of a joyful experience. That is one of the tenets of our work and our principles. We want people to have fun and enjoy the experience and walk out of the space feeling like they've accomplished something, their mood has changed, that they feel successful. I think, and also the last thing I want to talk about is play. And that I think a good, high quality intergenerational program incorporates play into its structure and art making and its final celebratory sharing at the end, because play is something people often think about as it's something that you do as a child, but it actually is a biological need throughout our lifespan, and it helps us to connect with and make meaning of the world. And so if we're playing together with different generations with their different lenses on the world, what an amazing amount of art and discovery that can be made in these kinds of spaces. So incorporating play, incorporating joy, and including developmentally appropriate rigor, I think is really important. I want to just say something too about sort of supplies for these kinds of art programming. Coming into an intergenerational program with a box of Crayola crayons, and you've got older adults and young people who are 10 years old, it's doesn't feel too good to folks, because you're sort of embracing kind of this idea of kids stuff. This is kids stuff. But if you elevate the supplies that you're using, so they're professional art tools, and you have professional teaching artists who are skilled in the art form, as well as all of those facilitation skills that we've been talking about, that is important to set the stage for a high quality program that people feel good about and learn about how to make art and connect with each other as part of those programs.
Jen, you're bringing the nitty gritty of this conversation that I had promised in our session materials. I want to just note it's 23 minutes past the hour, and we do need to stop at 1/2 the hour. And there are two things that we need to do. One is I want to address a question that came up in our chat. And the second thing is we just want to hear from each of you right before we go into our intermission what your breakout session promises for folks who want to attend. So let me ask you all this question, maybe you could chime in. Would be very interested, this audience member, in hearing further elaboration on how to position the value of these intergenerational programs to these exhausted, overworked administrators in aging services communities. What problems of theirs do these problems solve? Lika, go.
They always want to distinguish themselves from other communities, that they're better community, that people thrive in their community, and the quality of life is better in their community than other communities. This kind of high quality rigor with high quality art material, all of that distinguishes them, give them the competitive advantage over other communities. And if they can't see that, then they shouldn't be on their job.
I appreciate this because it echoes something else that came through our chat. Thank you, Kathy, about that it's easier to sell unique creative social engagement programs to families who are shopping a TLC community. So great point. Like it does maybe, it's a unique selling point. Let's put it that way.
I was also going to say that we work in all kinds of spaces. So we also have to think about intergenerational, multi-generational, co-generational programs happening in cross-sectional spaces as well. So we do programs in community centers. We do programs in theater spaces. We do programs in senior living facilities. We do programs in all of those spaces. And not all intergenerational programs need to be the same, right? As we're learning. And so there are some programs in some spaces and some curriculums that merit a more curated approach to who's in the room. There are some programs that have an application process. Ours does. There are some programs that have an interview process. Ours does, for example. And there's value to that. And it has to do with our goals and what we want to accomplish in the space. And that's perfectly okay. I want to say that the power balance is really important for us. So we don't compromise on that regard. And so we always try to have an equal number of older adults to younger people. You know, there's always attrition on both sides, you know, and we try to make sure that we are looking at that with wait lists and all sorts of other strategies. And we lose one or two, but we try to model activities within the curriculum to ameliorate when that power imbalance comes up. But again, not all programs have to be the same. To Jen's point, there is value as well in a one-time program if it's a conduit to something further down the road. The other thing that I want to say really, really quickly is that in terms of the education, part of it, our approach is an approach of aesthetic education, where it's also an encounter with the work of art of professional artists. This whole notion that we're both actors and spectators, and sometimes spectators. We're spectating and acting at the same time in the theatrical sense. And so that we have a right to engage with the work of artists and then get our hands dirty in the discipline as a response to it, and that we have reflection embedded in the work, that it's not just doing the work, but reflecting about the work. So all of that is also, I think, part of an important arts education program that combines celebration, rigor, love, politics, and I don't mean politics in the partisan sense, but power imbalances, all the things that shape our society. And that's highly necessary.
Thanks, Alex. Jen, do you have a response to this question about meeting the needs of administrators?
Yeah. I mean, we provide regularly professional development experiences for folks that live in these senior living communities about the arts and about the importance of the arts, and we invite them, you know, on sort of on a learning level to learn about it theoretically, but then also to engage in a program and talk about what the effects of these kinds of programs are on themselves. And so it seems to me, and I had this experience when I was working more with educators, that once people feel it in their bodies themselves and they do it and they have the experience and they walk away from it, you know, with this cool piece of art that they've just created by, you know, and led by a professional teaching artist, and they feel good and their mood has changed, it kind of ignites a switch to get them thinking about how they can provide these kinds of opportunities to their residents. We also have developed a couple of resources that we provide for these senior living communities, which are art supplies, instructions, training, coaching sessions. And so we're trying to support these communities to integrate arts engagement for the older adults that are residents there, and to do intergenerational programs as part of that. And we also, you know, on the first, whenever we do a program for the first time in a senior living community, we roll in with our cart. So we have many carts we have all of our art supplies with us. And so we're not asking any additional work out of that staff member. We are providing an opportunity for the residents to engage with young people and with the arts in a way that is a positive experience for them, and isn't adding an additional layer of work to the community. And I think that that is solving a problem for them, and providing programming is solving a problem for them, particularly if they are understaffed. So I would just add those pieces.
That's great. I want to just note that the sort of final wrap-up comment in response here that we hear from Anne basting in the chat is that there is some danger of LTC communities using arts groups for market advantage, quote unquote, as a mask for bad care. So looking hard at how the arts are being used and trusting that these communities are really partners in quality of care is important too. Of course, as always, we are right at the end of our session here. So I want to just be respectful. We've been on Zoom for like an hour and a half. So I want to make sure our audience members have a 15-minute break, and you too. But Anne, that's a great segue, because Anne Basting will be joining us when we meet back in 15 minutes for our breakout rooms. I'll be efficient here and just say, Lika and Anne are going to lead a conversation that will just keep going in this direction about Lika's work and about intergenerational programming. Anne is the founder and director of Time Slips. I'm sure many of you are familiar, so it will be a very excellent conversation. Alex is going to be presenting in sort of a hands-on way, hopefully about the work of New York Theater Workshop and Mind the Gap, and what theater in particular, the value add the theater has in this kind of intergenerational, co-generational work. And Jen and her wealth of experience in community partnerships and thinking about how intergenerational work, arts work, is like not just limited to art spaces, but all across the community, will also be just an excellent person to connect with in her breakout room. So come back. We're going to sign off Zoom. We're going to close Zoom. Come back in 15 minutes. We'll have a short moment to get everybody situated into the group that you want to go into. And you'll be with these presenters individually for an hour. We'll come back for some final share outs, and that will be our afternoon. So great work, you all. Thank you so much. We'll see everyone in 15 minutes.